That is just it. So if we have water, why can't we? Today, the Chinese are reviving Silk Road, the Silk Road. The Silk Road is a trade route linking China with Europe. If you go to Chongqing, one of the industrial cities that specializes in ICT and chips, they will tell you one wind, two sail. One wind simply means one airport by air. They can go to any part of the world. Sail, the two waterways that can grant them access to Greater Asia in Europe and other parts of the world. So they've gone back to history to revive a corridor that they met as historical information. But because they knew the viability of this trade route, they are reviving it, and we were killing it.
Okay, Bakare, now some would say by now we should be seeing ocean liners, water tourism boosted, and rather maybe a family flight to some small locations or to go and have ocean liners. Nigeria is huge in terms of resource to run ocean liners and boost water tourism. Now, one of the respondents that report was very emphatic that one way out is to adapt a PPP model. Maybe it will work.
Thank you. Let me revert back a little bit to where you started. You said those days the missionaries were coming here and they had access to the interland. More so, Nigeria was being run from a place called Zungeru, and they were getting there by waterways. But I can tell you one thing: we did not improve on the mode they were using. Those days there were canoes, they were flat bottom boats, not with hulls that needed a deeper situation. But the thing is, they were using that to achieve their aim. They had the railways to move A, B, C, D. They had the waterways to get them into places there are no roads or rail lines. They were using those for a goal, and they achieved the goal. Now it is now our turn. How do we achieve the goal of having access to the interland, being able to go economic in terms of goods and services being moved? I'll tell you this for free. It's the norm. It's out there that Nigeria, the only ports we have are the Papa and Tinkan. What is happening to Warri, Port Harcourt, and Calabar? We take time out to go in depth into what the government is doing and what the people are doing to mitigate what the government wants to do. I'll tell you this. I know about the case of the Calabar port. Contracts were given for the dredging. And when it comes to dredging, you calculate by value or by the volume of sand dredged out is the work done. My fellow Nigerians out there told them the ones you've dredged is enough. Let us have the money. That was the end of it. Let me run you another inference if Nigerians don't understand that. Look at our refineries. How many TAMs have we had? Turnaround maintenance. More than 20. Turnaround maintenance means heavy duty money. Take this money, repair this refinery. They bring it today.
So how do we now find solution to the PPP model?
The element of the human capital comes in, which was what I said earlier. The will, the attitude, and the patriotism. If you are not a patriotic person, if you are a rogue, you are a rogue. If you're a nice person, you're a nice person. If you wish Nigeria well, if you're patriotic enough, if you wish Nigeria well, things will get done. We've had so much money. Oh, General Gowon, I'd like to say this for you. Those days he said, we've got so much money, we don't even know what to do with it. You see, those words, I was around. I was a young man then. Those words got me mad somehow because there was a lot to do with it. But the attitude of the people that were supposed to give him the advice was not there. You know what they did to him? They said, excuse me, sir. Let me say the positive first. As at that time, we had the funds to have a ring road in Nigeria. Lagos, East, Meduguri, this, that, and back to Lagos. And then we had enough money to do roads linking to the center. We could do same for railways. We had the money. We had the money for a housing estate in every state in Nigeria. Those are the positives. We didn't do it. I hate to say this. As an African, they don't talk about the debt, but I'll say it here. We had two Nigerians when they asked them, when Gawan asked them, because they were the men there. They said, "Excuse me, sir, the best bet is this is a Canadian innovation. Pay people more money, employ people. To do what? Nothing. Pay them for work they did not do." That was the beginning of what we are suffering today. There is a bloated workforce. Every year you hear 40,000 ghosts this year, 70,000 ghosts next year. They've been all beefed up those days. Because the one in his aptitude, you see, that was why I was saying we've been moving. And what is wrong with us is systemic. The man asked people that were supposed to know what they would do with this money. They said, give them extras. They even backdated the monies, 3 months behind. And then what happened in the civil service? You had more people than officers in the civil service then. You will get employed, you won't have a desk.
We agree with what you're saying, but the point we're saying is that we're at the 60th year as a sovereign nation. Put quickly, 4 years. Let's profess solutions.
If we don't look at it, if we don't talk about it,
we agree.
You see, the thing is that has come that has come and gone. Because right now, I can tell you, the whole world knows. My grandkid, who is 14, is smart enough to know. One of our the pain of our problem is an over-bloated workforce. Our salaries and wages, it's out of the ordinary. So there is no money for anything. No money for anything. You pay people who are doing nothing. There are people working. There are ghosts. There are quasi-ghosts. So you see, it boils down to that element of the will to be a Nigerian, the attitude to be a Nigerian, the patriotism. And like what you said, your language was service.
Service, yeah.
Service has those three in it. The will, the attitude, and the patriotism. And honestly, I'm a Nigerian. I'm yet to find a Nigerian that has the three.
Okay, let's just hold it there. Now, sometime I had a chat with the Korean ambassador to Nigeria, and he said the resource base of Korea, largely where they are, was what we call the senior citizens. Now, they have a portal in Korea. If you retire, you're moved to that portal. If government is challenged, they need engineers, ICT-based administrators. That's where they go
to tap into
But most times in Nigeria, it's as though when you serve your term in public service, you serve your term in the private sector, I'm not a senior citizen. Either you retire to the village or you just live some regimented lifestyle until the day maybe God says it's time and you go. But quickly, the question we ask is, where is the youth? And I came up with this quickly because just this morning on the Twitter handle of the Minister of Youth and Sports, he said, while being a youth is not an excuse to commit crimes or escape the law, those in charge of crime prevention must play by the books. And he says, I urge all Nigerian youths to continue to be law-abiding and be assured that under President Muhammadu Buhari, issues concerning them will engage government attention. How best can Nigerian youths be engaged so that their mindset value orientation changes to what we are thinking, changes for them to imbibe where we went away, and maybe they pull it back and take off from there?
Well, thank you very much. I think there is no one single solution to the issue you've raised. There are diverse issues in the push that is propelling Nigerian youths to behave the way they are behaving. Nigerian youths cannot be detached from their parents. Their parents are their role models. their parents, friends are their role models. And they cannot be detached from Nigerian society. A society that continues to vilify honest, patriotic people and continue to glorify pen robbers and those that are making life miserable for the people. So today, if you still to make money, they give you chieftaincy title and they celebrate you in grand style with music to your name that is praising you.
Yeah, of course.
So, and the Nigerian youth is learning from that.
Oh, yes.
So you have people that are falsifying their ages to contest the election, people that are rigging elections, and they are mobilizing this youth to be used to rig elections. And in the process, the youth are learning. So it has to do with our mindset as a people and the kind of economy we are operating. Let me say this, that we've had more crimes and conflict in Nigeria under neoliberal democracy than any other system of government in Nigeria. Go and check the statistics.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Even the military we are vilifying today, there was semblance of order under the military, even in the issue of corruption. And what has been happening consistently after the first set of people left, people like Awolowo, Zik, and the rest, we've continually used our problems to siphon money from government. So there is need for power generation, and we put up beautiful proposals, and we collect the money without doing anything, and nothing happens. And then you expect the Nigerian youth not to do the same? It's about transition. It's about transmission of values. It's about what the people are saying. So, neoliberalism unleash our criminogenic minds to crime because it's about personal drive. It's about my interest. Nobody exists. So, where I am supposed to sign a document and I will not take 1 naira, and I will sign that same document and I will take 10 million, which will I take? If I sign for the sake of service, as you said, nobody will come and say thank you. But if I sign and take 10 million, then I go to Asokoro. And the people that packaged that proposal are young men. They knew what they did.
What it entails, you see.
So what are you teaching them?
Okay.
I think
this conversation is going to be very interesting now.
Yeah.
Some of the centers we had introduced earlier are now set,
okay.
And it's only auspicious we go there, introduce the guests, so that we do what we call a real potpourri of issues across the country. Now, quickly, from Akure, joining us via Zoom, we have Ezenwa Nwagu. Ezenwa Nwagu is a president partners for Electoral Reforms. Good to see you on Nigeria 60.
Good afternoon.
And from our Just Network Center, we have, I may not particularly know who is on set now, but Omar Shitian is a legal practitioner. Good to see you on the program. Is there with Professor Johanna Ezam, former Vice Chancellor, Plateau State University, Bokos. And beginning with Ezenwa, if they can hear me, let me begin with Ezenwa. Ezenwa, we are doing Nigeria at 60, and besides the fact that Nigeria has seen it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, people will ask, is that enough for us to be balkanized? But the way forward is the oneness of Nigeria, as much as we have these challenges, remains non-negotiable. People will say remains sacrosanct. So I ask you, from this perspective of oneness of Nigeria, no Nigeria is more Nigerian than any other Nigeria. How do you react to this?
Well, thank you. I just think that perhaps we may not necessarily need to be talking about how our togetherness is non-negotiable, but we need to realize that we have to work to ensure that the different components that make up Nigeria find reason strong enough to continue to invest everything they have to ensure that our unity progresses in a way that is beneficial to all. I think that we must realize that the struggle to nation is not a walk in the park. Is a continuous throwing of everything that we have as a people to make sure that we find our living together worth the while. And I think that our attitude to how we can live together has adopted a microwave attitude. We think that once we say we want to be together, then that is how it's going to happen. It's going to take our energies, it's going to take our physical energies, it is going to take our innovative capabilities, it will take intellectual and academic competencies to ensure that this living together is worth the while. And so we all have to make contributions to it. The arrogance that we see among the dominant sectors that make up the country sometimes annoys. It makes the other components. When people talk about things in the country, they talk about Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, and all that. And the truth of the matter is that they talk about, there is no Igbo in this appointment. Igbos did not make up the number. In this appointment, Yorubas are not there. In this appointment, Hausas are not there. But the bigger, the makeup of this country is so big and huge and humongous in the way that these other components who contribute their own quota to making the country what it is don't have a sense that they are being carried along. So we must ensure that this arrogance is put at bay, and that we understand that beyond these dominant groups, there are much more important, relevant, and contributory sections of this country that are not stake seekers, that are also stakeholders in the enterprise that is called Nigeria. So I think that it's not about whether it's negotiable or not. It's about the fact that we must all work together to be united. The bigger we are, the better for us. There is nothing in being small. Smallness does not. Most countries today are looking to see how they can be like Nigeria. Most countries today envy our human capital. Human capital. They envy our natural resource. They envy the intellectual contributions that we are making to the Committee of Nations. And so I don't think that we should play in that small league. We must continue to emphasize our bigness and then make that bigness what it's supposed to be in the way that it complements the ability to provision for the people who live in this space called Nigeria.
Okay, Ezenwa, before I go to Jos, still on you quickly. I know you are in Akure and you're there. A countdown to the elections coming up a couple of days after now. Now, let's look at the perspective of electoral governance in Nigeria. Before we joined you, maybe you listened to us. The guests here were sustaining the conversation on part of the problem we have in the public service or service delivery in Nigeria is the fact that people pay to be given the mandate to go and recoup what they spent. Now, looking at electoral governance, and by this morning at the INEC portal, the discussion with the officials who are going to conduct the election is they must be high above board to ensure that elections are conducted there, maybe taking a cue from Edo State. So if we are talking about 60 years and we achieve what we achieved in Edo State, what are you looking at within this ambit for Ondo State?
Let me be clear. There is nothing fundamentally. There was no new strong innovation that was brought into the electoral process in Edo, apart from perhaps the electronic results platform that has been introduced. My attitude has always been that anytime you hear about violence, you hear about snatching of ballot box, you hear about vote buying and such other malfeasance that we continue to see in our electoral process, is proof positive that the electoral management body has got its acts together. you don't need to stop the ballot box if you can buy up officials. What we used to have post 2011, pre-2011, was a situation in which the electoral officials take ballot papers and election materials to the homes of politicians and even result sheets. And so there was relatively no need for anybody to get desperate. When you buy the officials, you don't need to go and break anybody's head at the polling unit. So if the politicians and their political parties and their candidates that we refuse to oversight, we oversight the electoral management body in a way that has put them to continually, introspect and work to improve the electoral process. But the other stakeholders in the electoral process, we are not giving enough attention to them the way we give to the electoral management body. So if the politicians, their candidates, commit to fair, free, credible election, we are going to have that. When I talk about the politicians, I also talk about the government in power and the opposition. The government in power can meddle through the involvement of security agencies in the electoral process. And the opposition party itself can continue to walk behind the scene while shouting itself hoarse about oppression and manipulation, trying very hard to manipulate the electoral process itself. So the domain that we need to pay attention is in the domain of the politicians and their candidates, and how they connive and compromise the electoral process through, one, investing in ensuring that we do not have professional security provisioning for electoral process, and secondly, that in the ways that they conduct even their own primaries, the way they conduct themselves during the electoral process shows that they have not come into the conversation for electoral reform. So my attitude always is, yes, we are oversighting very strongly through civil society, the media, and everyone. Every time we talk about elections is about what INEC will do, but we hardly invest time and resources to talk about what the political parties and their candidates and the security agencies, who are also very critical stakeholders in the kind of electoral process that we are looking forward to. So in Edo, we saw that the soldiers, for instance, the military stayed very carefully at the outer layers of the security architecture, which is on the road. We didn't see military patrolling the streets of Edo State. We saw the police responding relatively well to the issues around violence when they cropped up. If that happens in Ondo State, and Ondo State is a relatively more critical place than Edo. Many times while we were going to Edo, a lot of people were talking about violence, and I kept pointing to the fact that the historical antecedents of Ondo State makes it more important for us to pay a lot of attention because of the recurrence of violence in the riverine communities of Ilaje, Edo. And this is shifty also. The issue of criminal electoral crimes gets very shifty. So even when we have flashpoints that we celebrate, we must continue to pay attention, because even in the rhetorics, the rhetorics that you get from the political actors in Ondo State shows you that we need to pay much more attention to Ondo State than we did to Edo State.
Okay, Ezenwa, we'll come back to you for other perspective. Thanks for now. We'll come back to you. And we'll take some reports now, and I believe by the time we are back, Joss will be ready for us to interact with them from here. It has been 60 years of independence for Africa's most populous black nation, Nigeria. While celebrating the country's numerous achievements, it is also a period to soberly reflect on how much the people have done to take the nation to greater heights, like we recite in the National Pledge. Are we faithful, loyal, and honest to the country, Nigeria, or are we only concerned with what Nigeria can do for us? Umar Basi Edet was out in the streets speaking with a cross-section of Nigerians.
I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest. Those are the first lines of the National Pledge, which evokes patriotism and constantly reminds the citizens of the allegiance they owe to the country. These words are expected to be deeply engraved in the hearts of every Nigerian. But beyond merely reciting the pledge, do Nigerians show faithfulness, loyalty, and honesty to their country?
I heard of loyal to serve your country. That was when I was in primary school. I was when Buhari was still the head of the country, and I don't think that is what is happening now.
Nigeria are not loyal. All of us are corrupted. Corruptions embody the Nigerian people.
While many Nigerians argue that corrupt practices which bedevil the nation have eroded every sense of loyalty and honesty from the citizenry, others say those who are loyal do so out of selfish interests.
2.67 billion to its own personal account. Its own personal account. What is patriotism in this?
Love for the country is not there, reason being that our leaders have failed us.
However, all hope is not lost as they have a dream of a better Nigeria where every citizen would answer to the clarion call by being faithful, loyal, and honest.
This country will succeed when the right people are on top.
We are dreaming big and we hope our leader will lead us well to our destination.
What I dream for Nigeria is our government, especially federal government, to look into Nigerians' problem, to come to our aid. Things are too difficult.
Like John F. Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. In Calabar, Umar Basadate, NTA News.
Well, that report from Calabar takes us to Jos now, where Professor Yohana Izam, former Vice Chancellor, Plateau State University, Bokos, is joining us from Jos. Prof, you listen to that report and clearly, most times when we want to push the blame, we look at public sector. We forget the private sector. So much is happening at the private sector, which I want to say is against the etiquettes. So looking at that perspective, loyalty, and sometime in the lines of the old national anthem, it says, Nigeria we hail is our own dear native land, though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Now, from the perspective of etiquettes, that has been a problem lately. How do you react to this?
Couldn't agree less as we celebrate 60 years of independence. I think that we should not miss on this golden opportunity to hold on the right kinds of conversations in this country that will lead us to greatness. I agree very much that there has been a preponderance of the blame game, particularly looking at just the governance sector, looking at just the public sector, and the evidence clearly shows that the task of nation building also has a lot to do with how prepared the citizens are in terms of imbibing the nationalism in them and also preparing to also contribute their best to nation building. And so I agree very much that the searchlight should not just be on the public sector, but the entirety of the citizenry of this country perhaps might use the opportunity of this independence ceremonies to look at how the totality of the citizens of this country can also contribute their best to the building of this nation. Because the informal sector, in fact, has a great deal of responsibilities that they can also play in the area of nation building.
Prof, before the next question, I'm sorry I misintroduced you. I'm told you are the incumbent Vice Chancellor, Plateau State University, Bokos. So sorry for the mistake, please. Withdrawn. And just to follow before I take on Shetien. Now, from what you have just said, I want to ask you a similar question differently. No Nigerian is more Nigerian than the other, from the perspective of oneness of purpose. Okay, Professor Izam, I'm still on you. It seems you are having some audio challenge there. I believe if that is fixed, we'll get back to Jos and back to Bakare. Bakare, I just talked about etiquette. Etiquette has been a problem. You're in public office, you hold a particular office. Every office in the public sector, even in the private sector that has been properly structured or mainstreamed, there are etiquettes you need to observe. How do you react to this?
Thank you. It all boils down to what I said earlier, the element of the human factor. If you're not a good person, you're not a good person. If you're a good person, you're a good person. And it will apply in everything that you do. Whatever it is, whatever and wherever you're going to work is in an institution. And every institution has tenets of the institution. It takes the human factor to be able to adhere to the tenets of that institution to make them work. It applies in the civil service, it applies in the private sector. It is that human factor that brings it to the fore. And you see, before we now talk about you as a person, you need to think in terms of how did you get there? How did you grow up? You know, earlier we were talking in terms of our kids based on what our minister Sunday Dare said, something about that. So here we go. I would like to expand on that a little bit. You see, before you became a man, you were a boy. Before you became a boy, you are somebody's child. I keep saying this at all the fora that I go to. I look at my friends like you are out there and I say to you, what legacy are you leaving for the kids? It is the way we have brought up these kids that is giving Nigeria a problem. Somebody challenged me and said, no, it's not everybody. Some people bring out their kids, fine. I said, yes, but your kid will now go out on the street and peer pressure will turn him into something else. The bottom line is this, these kids, they look at us as models. They look at us as models, and it is what we do that affects them. I painted some inferences. I said, look at Tiger Woods. His father taught him how to play golf from age 2. Look at the Williams sisters. Their dad taught them how to play tennis before they became the biggest thing in tennis today. Look at Hamilton. He's the biggest thing in Formula 1. His father taught him that by taking him to a go-kart rink when he was a 4-year-old boy. So I'm asking every Nigerian parent, what is it? What is the legacy you're giving to your kid? What have you taught your kid lately? Is it you just wake up in the morning and you make up money and then you give him the money, hey, go and spend the money whichever way you want? If we keep doing this, we are shortchanging ourselves. The kids we are trying to bring up that will become men, that will become leaders of tomorrow are not well brought up. So you see my angle is, like you said, before the service, there has to be the attitude. Before the attitude, there has to be parenting. It is the parenting that gives the kid. These are our youth that are not doing anything these days. All they do now, they just look at their parents and say, I know my dad doesn't earn, my dad's salary is maybe $1 million a month. And we have 10 cars in the house that are close to 100 million. Where did he get the money from? He must have done something wrong. These kids now say, well, whatever it is my dad did, I'm going to do same. I'm going to do even much more. So our problem, our bane is, how do we bring up the next generation of kids to be good kids? And I'll say one thing for these kids these days, because let's say 30 years thereabout, I was in my middle age. And then people will probably ask me the same question that they're asking now. And you know what I'll say to that? The people I met in government when I was growing up, they are still around.
Okay, let me hold you there. I believe by the time we come back from Ezenwa's reaction, Joss would have been ready. We lost audio signal from that end. Ezenwa, back to you. I'm just sustaining the conversation right now. Part of the problem, besides even attitude to service, some persons, well, I never can tell why it is so at times, while in office, lose sight of the fact that every public office or even the private sector, those that are properly mainstreamed, there are etiquette you have to adhere to. You find people in public office, mode of dressing, utterances, completely an affront to what the extant rules say. How do we change from this?
Well, I think that my brother and my friend who's been engaging this issue talks from the point of parenting and legacy and what we are bequeathing. But I, as he was just talking, I was just reflecting that some of the people who occupy public office today were products of moral institutions. The Ahmadiyya primary schools of this world, the CMS Grammar School, the St. Finbar's, the Hope Waddell, and all of those. So, if you talk about in terms of morals, the generation that we're talking about today were the ones who pride themselves of being brought up in very strong moral environment at this time, but that is not reflecting in the attitudes that we see. So we need to do much more than sermonize and reminiscence about how good parenting and all of those things can. What has happened to public service and the private sector first comes from the fact that the people who took over from the colonial masters did not delink. They did not take away their attitude, the kind of attitude that the colonial masters had towards the colonials. So they built, for instance, their government reserved areas. They had their government reserved areas. They had separate lifts that only them can. The environment that they live was well paved, flowers everywhere, water was running, good roads. But just side by side, it are slums from where they drew people who came to service their GRA. So when these folks took over, they did not think in terms of the fact that they were the same with the people who they thought themselves more as colonial masters. They were white people in black skin, as Frantz Fanon will say. So that we have carried that on. Everyone who is in public service, everyone who is anywhere is thinking of how to be better than the next person. Our general attitude is about acquisition. We want to be better than the next person. We want to, if you go to the ministry, if you go to the police stations, there is a separate lift, separate staircase for the commissioner, separate staircase for the minister, separate. So there's that separateness in terms of understanding that public service is about, how do you better the lives of the majority of your citizens? We did not carry that as we are coming. So whether in public or private sector, whether or then my friend is talking about how people dress or how they don't dress, that is not the real issue. The fundamentals is that we have conceived public office as a place to get better than our peers. So any opportunity, we want to live in Maitama, we want to live in Asokoro. We disdain those who live in Karo. We talk about those who live in Idu. We think that if you live in Ebutemeta and you are not living in Banana Island and you are not living in Ikoyi, you are not living in Victoria Island, that you are not successful. So the things that we have drawn as our measure of success are the reasons why the values that we tend to talk about does not resonate with anyone. So both the guy who is doing Yahoo now, the one who is involved in different kinds of crime, all he wants is to buy a house in Banana Island. What he wants to do is to live in Asokoro, because that is what the society has brought up to him as success. And that is what the leaders who took over from the colonial masters did not break away from. We continued the discrimination, we continued the separateness. the differentness in terms of how we relate with our own citizens. And that has driven everything that we do. So except we break from that, and that is why you see people, they can build the best mansion in the environment where they live, and the road to those places are not motorable. They barricade the place. We have done that in private schools. We have destroyed public schools and created a differentness in public schools. Our children can go to the best schools. The children of the poor can remain in the public schools. Until we begin to think in terms of regenerating a process that helps us to equalize opportunities, democratize opportunities, we will continue to lament about values. Because values in itself, yes, ethical leadership will mean the fact that I can think about the next person. In my office where I work, I am not thinking of getting better than the next person. I'm not thinking of being on level 10 and having 4 of my children's school abroad. And I pride with my colleagues that 4 of my children are schooling abroad because I am in audit, because I am in finance, because I am in marketing.
Okay.
The thinking. So we prioritize. If you work in NNPC, if you work in FIRS, if you work in
Isabel, let me hold you there. What I was simply saying, can you just maybe in one sentence, a couple of steps have been taken, as much as you have reeled out what has been the problem, but some steps have been taken to correct this. So what do you make of it as a way forward?
The salary
Briefly.
of the person who works in FIRS is not the same salary with you that works in NTA. Nothing has been done. We have these things, and our political correctness is the reason why we are not going to make progress as a people. The man who works in NNPC prides himself with the resources of the people. He gives the impression that he's a superhuman being. The one who works in the Ministry of Commerce, who is driving this process, you make him feel inferior. We must talk about these things. Why do you have to bribe to go to become a staff of FIRS? Why do you have to? So the challenge that we have is that we have made even value. The vice chancellor who is there now, the salary of the man who is in the House of Representatives, is superior to an academic who has invested on his life in research to make life more meaningful for people. So until we have this brutal conversation and having
Thank you, Ezenwa. I'll come back to you. Thank you, Ezenwa. Quite deep thought there. And quickly, I hear Joss is back, and we sustained some discussion with Professor Johanna Izam, and can we see Barrister Umar Shetin? Umar Shetin, you have heard from us here. Is Umar Shetin there? Okay, beautiful. And I know you may have been listening to us, and let me ask you differently. I remember, I believe you should have been in touch with The Prince, put together by Niccolo Machiavelli. He was detained for years, and as much as the state tied him down in Italy. But when he was released, he came up with prescriptions to the government and said, if you do 1, 2, 3 to the end, all around power, the country will move forward. We are 60 years old. As much as the pitfalls have been there, steps have been taken to move us forward as a people. Like we said at the opening, our oneness is non-negotiable. So, from your perspective, if you're asked, what prescriptions do you have for us? Looking away from what were the problems, but moving forward as a nation, one people, one destiny, one future.
My own perspective of our main problems hinges around the infrastructure of government and the institutions of government. I do not think we have paid enough time in building these institutions so that they will be strengthened to the extent that they can be independent. If you take a look at the EFCC, it came up as as a new institution over which all Nigerians had a lot of hope. But suddenly it has fallen apart. And those who are mandated to look after that institution themselves broke down and became corrupt. And right now, I'm sure the president, as well as Nigerians, all Nigerians are completely confused. How do we face this new problem, this problem? I'm just taking that as an example. But the entire, the whole nation has a problem. And the problem is elitist. Every problem confronting this country is caused by the elite, by you and I, and Prof, and all of us, because we are so selfish that we do not believe that the country is bigger than us. We have to sit down, like Ezenwa said, and begin to ponder and ask ourselves, for goodness sake, why are we rushing for wealth instead of greatness for our country? All this money will go to nothing, because at the time you die, you won't take a kobo with you to your grave. So I think we should begin to look back and see the first republic, our grandfathers, those who built this country, who created this country, left nothing. The Sadona of Sokoto, Sahamadu Bello, left a 3-bedroom mud house in Sokoto. He had no other house anywhere else in this country. Satafa Balewa, the Prime Minister, died and left a mud house in Bauchi. The house has been taken over by the Ministry of the Historical Ministry in this country. It is now open to the public. The Chief of Afemi Awolowo left a house, a 3-bedroom house in Apapa. It's still there. So where are we rushing to? If we are to conduct a proper search and investigation into our public officers, none of them will be spared. Everybody is looting the country. We are sucking the country dry. At the end of the day, if the country is so dry that it has no more blood, it will just collapse with us. Then we'll be crying. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board. You cannot blame our leaders. Every leader who comes tries his best. But Nigerians are so smart. We are so smart. We know how to steal. We are so smart that there is nothing no law you will pass that they will not try to get around it. And that is the major problem in this country. We just sit down and tell ourselves the truth. There's no need to hurry. Let's sit down. 60 years is, Nigeria is still a child in terms of development of a country. But it is time for us to sit down and rethink. Unity, as you said, it's not something that we'll sit down and discuss. We have become of age. We cannot begin to fight each other. I beg my brothers of iPod, let's put our shoes down. Let's get back to the table and start building this country. You cannot build this country. Igbos have been part and parcel of the building of this country. We started all together. They are still building this country. From Port Loni in Borno State to Port Harcourt. There's no way you can't find Igbos. So there's no way you cannot find Hausa people. So let's living together and working together as a nation is what we cannot afford to miss. But honestly speaking, our institutions are too weak. They cannot stand the test of time. Any government that comes can just throw it apart and do whatever they like. But so long as these institutions are not strong, are not strengthened, we have a problem.
Okay, still on you, Barrister Shetian. You have touched on EFCC and you have talked about stealing. But what happens to the criminal justice system? The laws are there. Are you saying they are not effective?
Like I told you, Nigerians are too smart. There are ways of going around these laws. or there are ways of bribing ways out of these laws. And you know what I'm talking about. There is just no way you have to really, the government has to go out of its way and be smarter than the average Nigerian. In terms of corruption, for instance, you have to screw all the knots and block all the loopholes to ensure that the things are not done. I'll give you an example. In 1976, General Murtala Mohammed came up with a very smart way of probing public servants. Prior to that, no government had thought about that method. They went to the banks, checked everybody's accounts, and they would sit you down and say, look, this is your account. Let's take lodgement by lodgement and explain. And that's what really happened everywhere around this country. Most of the civil servants were found wanting. Some were not found wanting. But those who had lodgements they couldn't explain were asked to explain. Where you cannot explain, you are sent out of the service. So I think there are ways government can go around this. There are ways government cannot say they do not know that a permanent secretary has 20 houses in Lagos, 10 houses in Abuja, 2 houses in London, 1 in America. There are ways the government can find out. I mean, the government has a lot of eyes, a lot of ears, and it has the EFCC, it has the intelligence community. They can probe, they can do anything, they can find out a lot of things you and I cannot find out. So I think government should be more proactive and pay more attention to all these loopholes, block them, make sure, and strengthen and give independence to these institutions so that they will grow.
When we come back after the few reports, we'll come to Professor Izam on the role of religious leaders and traditional rulers in the oneness of Nigeria. But quickly, one of the rare themes of President Muhammadu Buhari's 60th independence broadcast is the need for togetherness among the diverse people in Nigeria. Abba Abubakar Yakub in Jos, Plateau State Capital, brings up opinion of citizens on the unity and diversity of Nigeria.
And of course, challenges. First, the call by the President that all Nigerians must unite to move the country forward is well appreciated.
The President is in this country. When he joined politics, when he became a president, not as an investment like other politicians. This man came to this country and became a president so as to help this country.
Unfortunately, what people tend to place now is their personal identity. No, I am from this area, he is from that area, which is is the key cause of our not developing as a pastor that we should have developed. If you could remember some years back, where when we were young, we were thinking of Nigeria as a country. We were not thinking of any other parochial interest. The central point then was Nigeria.
As far as this country is concerned, we do not have an option but to live together, to accommodate one another. We do not have any nation more than this one.
If regional and sectionalism becomes our forefront, then development will be something very far away from us. No one sector, no one region can do anything alone.
60 years ago, when Nigeria obtained her independence, Nigerians were proud of their rich and cultural diversity, and so we were united in all endeavors. With me now is Mr. Yemi Kosoko, a journalist and a public affairs commentator.
We should learn to be our brothers' keepers, irrespective of ethnic, religious, or political affiliations. After all, we are all Nigerians. So we should take a look at it from that perspective. Neither I'm a Yoruba man, nor an Igbo man, nor an Hausa man, Ijo or Birom. First and foremost, I am a Nigerian.
Having come 60 years, it's too late to go back. We have a lot to work for. We have a lot to live for. And Nigeria has been endowed by God for our own good.
They, however, appeal to Nigerians to remain united and do away with all negative tendencies that are capable of disrupting the peace and unity of the country. In Jos, Abba Abubakar Yakubu, NTA News.
And from pre-colonial times to early 21st century, the role of women in Nigeria continuously evolved with responsibility towards nation building. As Nigeria celebrates 60 years of independence, there is a louder call by women for a more enabling environment for their voices to be heard. Felicia Daliop Samaila brings us up to speed on the role of women in nation building 60 years down the lane.
In all stages of the country's development from the early history of Nigeria, which have been playing leading roles in shaping the nation's socio-political atmosphere, with the likes of Queen Amina of Zauzau, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, and Hajia Gambo Sawaba, who made tremendous impact during the pre-independence era and surmounted many obstacles and limitations which today stand as unforgettable legacy for Nigeria. The aforementioned contribution has today gained momentum with policies and more women as key players in the sustenance of the country's developmental strides. Nigeria, 60 years together, cannot therefore be complete without celebrating the efforts and contribution of women who are gainfully engaged in politics, agriculture, and other skills to build the nation.
The performance of any woman holding a political office cannot be compared with that of a man.
Of dark history cannot be written without Okoyili, of blessed memory. Okoyili, education went very far with her. Now we're talking about Okonjo-Iweala. Without the Nigerian woman, I'm just wondering whether we would have been where we are today. The Nigerian woman today have been so bold enough. Women have worked hard in the human rights section, up to about 90%, to ensure that gender-based violence has drastically reduced.
Despite the enormous achievements by women, there are existing constraints limiting their potential, which they say needs to be redressed as the country celebrates 60 years of independence.
We're not asking for equal rights. We're not saying give us 50-50%, no. We are asking for just 1/3. 1/3, and you will see how this country will turn around.
I've done so well, but the level is still very, very low. We need to come up with a voice. We need to agree as a people, as women. We need to trust ourselves. We need to build our confidence. When we do that, it is a step towards the right direction.
To all the women working hard for Nigeria, there is light at the end of the tunnel. In Jos, Felicia Daliop Samaila, NTA.
Thank you so much, Felicia. And that report keeps me glued with Professor Izam. Professor Izam, looking at what you just heard, let's look at the criteria, or we are in an era of, say, post-Beijing, 25 years on, and the women have come up with 12 critical areas of concern. But let's make that by the way. Let's look at the place of inclusivity in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. I am a very strong advocate of inclusivity, whether it is on the basis of gender balance or whether we are looking at inclusion in terms of the various social groupings, the tribes, the various religions. I think one of the strong points that make for stability of any nation space is that aspect of inclusivity, the sense that every person has a sense of belonging in the nation-building enterprise. And so, as you mentioned, this is post-Beijing. I think that we have evidence that suggests that our women folk have also done so well in terms of contributions to national development. I've listened also very keenly to the advocacy. The Minister of Women Affairs has in the recent past been moving around the country, and I think I want to salute her efforts because we have to carry along the women of this country. They have attributes that I believe, if mainstreamed into various aspects of the national life, it will also help us to grow faster. Whether we should do it by fiat or whatever means is another thing. But there is also a place where we must also talk about competence. It's not just about some abstract Beijing formulation of, say, give 40% or 50% in terms of affirmative action. But I think it has to be a holistic advocacy in terms of also providing equal opportunities for capacity building, also in the women folk. And so every cultural issues that inhibit their successes to acquire functional education and compete successfully with their male counterparts should be set aside so that they will also form part of the national productive force. As a university administrator, I can tell you that the evidence we are seeing suggests that, in terms of even outcomes, when you are doing a convocation, you find so many of the female students coming out with first class. They are leading the males. Even at the classroom situation, they do better in terms of their assignment, in terms of exams, and so on and so forth. So it will be very, very unfortunate if there are any things that is put in place as a hindrance to women participation in the nation building enterprise. And so inclusivity is very important from that point of view.
Okay, let's go to Barrister Shettian before I go round to Akure, back to Abuja. And I want to ask one question. Barrister Shettian, what's your perspective regarding thinking global but acting locally?
I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that question?
Thinking globally but acting locally. You didn't get me? What's your perspective regarding thinking global but acting locally?
I think globally, women have had to fight enormously from the 1980s for their right, in fact, the right to vote. And they fought so hard that today women in the United States and the United Kingdom and in Europe mainly have been prime ministers, have been presidents, and are very strong in Europe particularly. In the United States, a woman almost became president, Mrs. Clinton. But she beat Trump in the popular votes, but she couldn't earn the presidency because of the other factors. But in coming back home here, I do not think we should underplay our own development. We've tried. The Nigerian woman has come a long way from the very first ladies who became an elected representative. And in terms of education, if you take a look at the primary school figures and the secondary school figures in this country, there are a lot more girls than boys enrolling in secondary schools and primary schools. This will eventually transform into more women graduating and, of course, more women controlling many of the factors and many of the factors in running this country. So I think we should be a little patient. The only problem where women are lacking is in political appointments. And these political appointments are mostly representative. If they are representative, it means women have to go and look for votes. They are handicapped because most of Nigerian vote polling and vote seeking is done with money. Women do not have the resources. That's where they have problems. But women are gradually increasing their earning power, becoming more wealthy. And there are more millionaire women today than there were 60 years, 20 years ago. So I believe with time they will be able to fight their way along with their male counterparts for positions of power. And I noticed that the last few elections, general elections, there were women who were contesting for presidency in this country. I'm sure they haven't given up. There will be a day when there will be a strong woman, maybe backed by both men and women, who will be able to fight her way into the presidency. I know that we have a problem, a cultural problem in Nigeria, but those cultural problems are no more feasible. Okonjo-Iweala performed wonderfully as a minister. The present Minister of Finance is earning a good name, and she's a very strong woman, and she's done very well so far. And I believe many more women. The Minister for Women Affairs herself is a very strong, powerful politician in her own right. We have a lot more to hope for in women, and we shouldn't give up. And the women should not give up. They should fight, they should wake up and not expect manna to come from heaven. They should wake up and struggle. They should fight along with the men. Because these men are not, you can defeat them. Because the woman knows the society more than a man. It is the woman who takes care of the man when he is sick. The man doesn't take care of her when she is sick. It is the woman who feeds the man. The man doesn't cook for the woman in this country. So I think women should stand up and fight for their rights. Some of us are ready to help them fight.
Thank you so much, Shetin. Now let's go to Ezenwa. Ezenwa, let's veer into leadership. Nigerians have a mindset, a leader is firm and tailored strictly within the laws that drive the process. But what do you make of government decisions perceived unpopular yet not bad for the generality of the people? What do you make of that? Government decisions perceived unpopular, but if you look at the decisions critically, they are not bad for the generality of the people.
Well, I think that leadership is not a popularity contest. I think that even alphabetically, leadership is superior to the led. And if a leadership has competence, has capacity, is innovative and can think creatively, it has capacity to vision, really, much more than the led. And so the part of the challenge that policy enunciation have in the country is, for me, much more arrogance than whether the policy is even good or bad. We bring out policies and we assume that once we bring out those policies that everybody understands our intentions. My attitude has always been that before you bring out a policy, the vehicles of public media that we have can be used for clear 6 months, 3 months to canvass those issues. And then no matter how beautiful those ideas are, you will never run short of people who may help to fine-tune and even make those ideas better. But you know, we're coming from military background, we're coming from immediate effect mentality. Most of our institutions, we are gradually civilianizing in language. So government And many of the actors today were also people who were groomed in that immediate effect mentality. So the idea of conversation, the idea of consensus building is still a work in progress. So if we have a policy, we have the responsibility to push it through conversation, through engagement, and through even town halling around those issues. That's what democracy is about. It's about deep conversation. But we still have this situation where, I just think it is nice, and if it is nice, then everybody, I know it is nice. But it's a democracy, so you need to communicate in a way that everybody can understand that this your idea in the long run will be to my benefit. I know that there are policies of government that we have criticized in time past, but with the benefit of new knowledge, with the benefit of even evidential, resources, we are able to know that those policies that we criticize may not be as harmful as we thought. But it's also important to be ideological. We want to be able to see how much autochthonous the leadership of our country and those who make these policies, how much they think in terms of whether it benefits us and not benefit the interest of extraneous interests. As we speak today, the World Bank and the IMF are playing very, very deep roles, very, very deep roles in policy formulation in our country. And overall, we do appreciate the fact that some of the things that they are bringing for us and trying to push down our leaders may not be, but we need to have a conversation. So I'm not one to think in terms of good and bad. I'm more in terms of thinking in the fact that policy must be discussed. There has to be conversations around policies, and one of the ways to do that is to communicate them effectively. That's the benefit of public media. You can bring in more people to discuss those issues before they eventually become a policy, and that will be more helpful than dictating. That yes, I think it is good, and so it must be good. Sometimes, even when you think something is beneficial to people, it is in their own. Even when it is in their own enlightened self-interest, the nature of people is to resist because of the trust deficit that we have right now, and other issues that that plays primordial considerations. Why is he doing this? Does it benefit a section of the country? Is it helpful to everybody? But if there is a conversation, look at, for instance, the issue of the example you can have is the issue of the livestock conversation that we have been having. Every state can benefit from that initiative. But through politics and primordial considerations, we are killing something that is beneficial to everyone. Even if you do not want to understand that, you can create your own areas and buy your livestock and bring in the expertise that is available in other parts of the country to develop your livestock initiative. But we killed that initiative. We fought it not on the basis of scientific engagement, but on the basis of very primordial consideration. So most times it's about communication, it's about engagement. And many times it is also not out of ignorance. Sometimes it is about mischief. There are people who deliberately concoct, crisis and make sure that policies of government that can be beneficial are not understood. There should be people who are dedicated to fighting mischief and making sure that they are put under control and much more people can gain insight. There are times we are having conversations with people on policies. Look at the rice policy of the government, for instance, where we said, look, let us eat what we have. Let us consume our own rice. Our farmers will benefit from it. But the importers who have resources engage their own kind of media, and they backmount, that policy that eventually today, in many homes in the country, unlike what it used to be in the past, many homes today eat our own rice, and our own rice is said to be more nutritious than even the ones that are brought from Thailand and other places. So those kind of policies, what you need to do is to engage, is to have a conversation, is to make sure that you are shooting down mischief makers and using evidence. For instance, the farmers, How many local farmers have benefited from this in terms of the resources that have gone to them because of the growing in Kebbi, in Ebonyi, in Lagos, in Nasarawa, and many other places where rice is being grown today? Those values needs to be put out to the people to understand that, look, our own farmers are benefiting and they are getting resources. There are a lot of policies of government that are very, very important. So if we understand this from the point of communication and engagement, we will get more acceptability, we will get more embracing by majority of the citizens.
Thank you so much, Ezenwa. And when we return after a couple of reports will be taken, we shall sustain the conversation here in Abuja before going to Jos and back to Ezenwa joining us from Akure. And the report says, is it true that for any nation to thrive, it must have a harmonious relationship with her neighbors? In the light of Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary, Awal Yusuf Jibo examines Nigeria's relationship with her immediate neighbors.
Nigeria does not exist in isolation. The country is bordered by Republic of Benin in the west, Chad and Cameroon in the east, and Republic of Niger in the north. These countries, like Nigeria, are vestiges of colonial creation. Just as Nigeria was colonized by the British, the other countries were French colonies. Hence, their political, cultural, military, and economic affinities lie with France.
You can say overall our relationship with our neighbors have been cordial in the sense that there have not been major conflagrations except for problems we had with Cameroon over Bakassi and so on, which are settled by the International Court for Justice, the World Court.
Neighboring countries had over the years been engaged in a series of exploitation of Nigeria's natural and economic resources, as well as the encroachment on her territorial frontiers. Despite these, Nigeria has not deterred in her quest to ensuring peace in the region and beyond.
Nigeria played tremendous role in restoration of peace, democracy, and stability in Sierra Leone and Liberia, and not quite long, even in Gambia. And it is in recognition of that Nigeria has been accorded, I think, it was taught contributing countries to the United Nations peacekeeping operations.
We leverage on the historical ties that bind us together, that bound us together all the centuries. Two, Nigeria is an economic giant, not only in West Africa, but in the whole of West Africa. So this means we try to use our economic ties to improve relations. Three, the political connections that all those political unions that binds us into the West African economic community, I think we can leverage on that. And finally, we look out for our neighbors just as we expect them to look out for us.
Successive Nigerian governments have over the years emphasized the need for a more vibrant diplomatic relations and made significant efforts towards fostering good neighborliness. Lagos, Awal Yusuf Jibo, NTA News.
Thank you so much. That report takes us to the next phase of the discussion now. Now, as much as I keep saying the word, we have the bad side, the good side always is there. Let's look at Nigeria's visibility globally. And that takes me to bend backwards to the last question I asked Barrister Umar in Jos. Thinking global, acting locally. You find a lot of policies by some institutions in Nigeria. Say if they are not proactive, you adopt and adapt issues that will not work in the country. For instance, you could say we are in a global village, but as much as that, not everything global works globally. What you can do, you come up with a global phenomenon, but you adapt it to your own situation. Now, let's look at Nigeria's visibility globally. How do you assess it?
Well,
it's a big one.
It's a big one, but I'll try to dissect it. We have a mindset, and our mindset is responsible for where we are today. Our mindset is our greatest undoing in terms of relating with what we call international or global best practices. If global best practices things that would have solved our problems, by now Nigeria would not have any problem left. Because all government memo, they are all in tandem or in line with global best practices. If you come to democratic practices in Nigeria, go check all the documents, you will see in line with global best practices. Management of our resources. So it is not about paper-thing. It's not about mentioning. It's about doing the action itself that is required. And that is what I call problem-solving attitude. Problem-solving attitude is a mindset that looks at what is happening globally. For instance, today the world is moving towards artificial intelligence. AI. So the next phase of development will be driven by artificial intelligence. Now let us take India for instance. When ICT became the in thing, quietly the Indians invested in ICT. Today, the CEOs of major ICT companies in the world are Indians. If you're talking about financial experts today, majority of them are coming from Asia because they are investing in what is happening globally. So, thinking global and acting locally, everything is first of all local before it is global. So assuming you're going to world market, so what are you going with? You just go there and become a spectator? No. And that was why Deng Xiaoping, the leader of China, when he took over power in China, he said, let us practice communism with Chinese characteristics. Yeah, communism is a global phenomenon. Yeah, you have to conform to what Karl Marx said. But we need to come back to China because the Chinese people have their own attitude, they have their own mindset that inform the decisions they take. So in Nigeria, we've never for once sit back to say, what can we do with the resources that we have? We're always looking for experts. And when you're looking for expert, it means you have the resources to pay for the expert. Or you go and accept what? Technical cooperation. And this technical cooperation is not even in your own interest. So Nigerians are not even the driver of their development. You know, as someone made mention of something, he said IMF is playing a leading role in whatever we are doing in Nigeria. Now, the problem has always been, these people come in and they come to meet you and they ask you questions and you tell them what the problems are. They put it on an Excel sheet and they brandish it all over the world to say they are solving problems. Nobody can solve your problem apart from yourself. So the countries that are developing, what they are doing is to take human capital development seriously in line with the global economy. So for instance, what is the intent today in terms of